Hello and welcome to Japan Expert Insights and our Wednesday morning room with Tim Sullivan and me, Maya Matsuoka, as your hosts and moderators. In this podcast, we welcome comments, questions, and opinions. So if you haven't done so yet, join us next time on Clubhouse. In the meantime, you can find us at japanexpertinsights.com and our YouTube channel, where we upload all the conversations on Japanese politics, business insights, and Japan's role in the Indo-Pacific region. Good morning to everybody. Thank you for joining on Wednesday morning. Today we have Binati Sheth. She's a writer and a celebrity, I believe, on LinkedIn.
So lol.
Great follower.
No, I'm not.
No, but when I discovered Binati on LinkedIn, I was really excited with all the fresh perspectives Binati gives about the topics she talks about. So Binati has an engineering background, but she actually talks about not only about engineering, but about philosophy and culture, about other issues that at first sight don't seem to be connected to engineering. However, today we're going to talk about anime. We're going to talk about the storytelling there, but also she's going to build a case in defense of anime. And we're going to hear why we came up with this topic. And of course, in addition to this, to everybody who is here, if you are in a situation that allows you to speak, to join us here on stage, please come up and talk with us. We'll be very happy to have you here because anime is really a hot topic even now. And that's it. Binati, let's continue.
Of course. Yes, I second what Maya just said, which is, come up and talk to us because ultimately, what makes, I think, one of the bigger strengths of anime and manga and even comics and all of these Marvel superhero movies, which seem so silly on the front face of it all. But if you look at it, the communities that form around discussing this format of storytelling, so many people have so much to say about manga, anime, comic book movies, and the reason behind that is very simple. It's emotions, right? They are exclusively dealing with emotional storytelling. And the thing about emotions is that emotions are not, I mean, they are universal, but then they're not exactly universal in that you see something, you are going to feel something, somebody standing next to you will feel something else. And, the same applies across the board. So if you have anything to share, please just feel free to come up and do so because we are seeking perspectives around anime in the first place. So to start building my case, to reiterate, anime is about emotional storytelling, focusing on accessibility of messaging and non-subtextual methodology of telling a story. Now, what that means is when you read Harry Potter, right, or when you watch Harry Potter, the subtext of death just leers at you from the first book till the last book. Death is just there, lingering in every single paragraph, in every single chapter. And that in anime is much more defined, which is why I don't think it classifies as subtext. For a few people who read Harry Potter, missing on the original theme of the book, which is death, and death being healed by love, being the conclusion, that won't happen in anime because in the anime, they would make it very, very clear this is the subtext. And so anyone who is watching a specific shonen anime knows exactly what the story is about. Take anyone who watches Naruto knows it is about friendship and brotherhood. That's it. Ultimately, there's no other, I would say, subtext there. It's about that. Be good friends to each other, have the spirit of camaraderie, and just, get your goal, whatever that goal is. So I think that is something that anime does very, very well, which is why it has this power of making things understandable, right? And I personally have been very open about how I got my start in philosophy from anime because understanding philosophy while you read it, right? It used to be taught to us in English literature classes. And of course, we were scratching our heads in school going, Arey, what is this? I don't understand this. Why are we being tortured with this chapter? But that wasn't the case while watching the anime, which was, in a sense, taking the philosophical concept, which, Sartre or even Nietzsche, for that matter, would be talking about in astute detail. So I think that makes anime incredibly emotional. I mean, am I audible or like it's just that you guys are so disciplined you don't like say anything in the middle?
If it is about whether we can hear you, yes, you sound very clear. So don't worry
Oh,
about.
okay, okay, great,
Yes.
great. Yes, and this is why I suck at social media, to be honest, because I rely very, very heavily on input from the people I'm talking to, and of course, there's no input, generally speaking, on social media. So I apologize for that.
Well, the struggle is
Anywho,
real for all of us. We all have that. Maya and I just talked about that. So yeah, you're doing fine. You're doing wonderful. So please continue.
Yes, please.
okay, okay. Okay, great, great. Thank you so much for that. Uh, so yeah, I think the nature of the direct nature of storytelling, I think, makes it very, very easy for people to understand what is going on, and not just understand, immediately relate to what is going on, right? Because I always say this, you don't have to be a ninja or a samurai or like someone in a mafia or in a space galactic unit to get what is happening in the anime. You just need to understand the human condition, right? You need to understand that we all make human choices in the way we live our life, and that's the only thing that's of importance. You don't need to put yourself in the shoes, as we say, walk a mile in someone. You don't need that. You just need to be yourself, and I think that is what brings me to point number two, which is anime mostly is not for passive watching, right? And this probably might be a controversial thing to say, but a lot of cartoons and movies and things like that we have, which is specifically targeting children and teenagers, it is for passive watching, just to keep people occupied so that we can do our work as adults. We put the TV on or iPad on for the kid to distract it, like, please get hypnotized by these colorful shapes moving on the screen. That is passive watching. Anime to me is not that. I think anime requires you to be active while you watch it because you have to engage with what is happening, right? If you don't, you will be so lost going, why are they screaming? Why is there a stuff that is blowing up? Why is that character crying and this one is laughing? Why are they scribbling a name in a notebook and someone is dying? You'll be so lost if you are watching it passively. Another advantage that anime has is it is directed for those who actively watch stuff. So if you are targeting active watchers, right, people who actively engage with the thing that they are watching, reading, experiencing, etc., etc., you automatically have an advantage of them ultimately engaging with the content in the first place, right? So, someone who watches a Tom and Jerry cartoon, for instance, or a Popeye cartoon, versus a fan of like One Piece or Bleach or Naruto. I think as Japanese people or people living in Japan, you guys know how toxic and annoying and maybe sometimes loud the anime fans tend to be, specifically anime fans coming from other countries. I mean, that in and on itself, people willing to express that much excitement over something, I think there's something wonderful and pure about that. To get so engaged into a story that you are embodying the characters and prancing around, being disruptive, of course, but still uh, embracing the child within, if I were to call it that. I think to me that is storytelling doing what it is supposed to do, which is get people invested in the story, right? So I think there's that. Uh, can I ask you guys, Maya and Tim and anyone else who's listening, how do you guys perceive anime fans as where you live and things of that sort? Because I'm very curious.
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, first of all, I have to say that I do not belong to the generation that really grew up with Japanese anime. So for
Okay.
me, when I came to Japan, my first train ride was really a fascinating experience because I would see adults reading comic books there. And I would,
Mhm.
of course, I was not prepared for that. It's definitely my fault that I didn't know anything about Japan at that point and the Japanese anime, but and also comic books. But it was fascinating, to see all those adult men sitting in the train, and then they were reading comic books, and it was like, what's this? Because back home, just as you mentioned, well, I grew up with comic books that were targeted at children and teenagers
Mm.
as well. So that was really strange until I realized that it was really a huge part of the culture here. And a lot of books actually were created. I mean, like books for adults, they were created as comic books. And then those adult fans, because they're also, I mean, like, okay, we're talking about comic books here in Japan, manga and anime, these are two different things. I realized that. But from
Mm.
there, I actually realized that those two genres, they're connected, and how actually there was huge follower bases for the two genres. And then
Right.
some of my friends here, foreign friends, they would talk about anime, and I was like, why are you talking about anime? Because it's also something, for me personally, from my experience, it is something that is for children. Right
Mm.
back home it was, but then I realized that actually, once again, as the manga books, the anime was, there were a lot of concepts actually made accessible to the general public through different films here, anime. And
Mm.
yeah, that was fascinating to me. But at the same time, I wondered, why is it so much easier, for people to watch anime or to read manga rather than to read the real books?
Mm.
So, and those
Well,
guys, yes, and to get to your point eventually, sorry, it's really a long explanation and a long
no,
response.
no, please, please. I was making, I have a habit of making sound effects. Don't let that deter you. It's just me being me. Apologies for that.
Oh, no, no, not at all. But I would say that the people, when they're on the train, they're very quiet. I mean, the manga or anime fans. But once you get to, of course, to Harajuku or other places in Tokyo where they places that they frequent, you can see how vivid and sometimes noisy they are indeed. But I think that's part of the culture anyway. So as long as they don't, overstep on other people's comfort, then probably that's not such a bad thing. So yes, this is what I have to say in response to your question.
Certainly, certainly. I totally understand. And, I've seen this across India as well, where anime fans, you look at their Instagrams and things like that. It is incredibly colorful, very loud. And then you meet the anime fan in question in person, and they are shy potatoes. I'm like, yay, same pinch. So it's as long as people are not violating any cultural or any proprietary boundaries. I think it's understandable why that is the case. To what you said, silent people suddenly coming to life. I think that is the power of the arts in question because, well, I don't know how aging like milk, my opinion is in this regard. But I think Asian societies in general have an incredibly collectivist bend, right, versus the Western individualistic bend. And so people are so used to thinking about what others will say and think and things of that sort. And then you find like these little pockets where you can express uh, your identity. For a lot of people in India, uh, not anime per se, but cosplaying. Cosplaying is something that is very popular over here as well. And people do find a way to have like a 360-degree personality shift when they put on that costume. And I think in many ways it is that individualistic versus collectivist personality clashing against each other. And then you need to put on that persona to shed your original or your social your social outlook and just be like, I'm going to enjoy myself for the 1 hour I'm in Harajuku, or for the 1 hour I'm in this play, or in this, uh, in this event, things of that sort. So I think that's probably what happens. People getting to find the uh, camaraderie of non-judgment, if that makes sense.
Well, I think it
Anyhow,
makes perfect sense, and all the more because in the Japanese culture in particular, there is that. Um, can I say the tradition of masks? And the masks can be physical and they can be perceived. But, well, we have talked about this before, and I think that Tim can chime in here when it comes to actually people being, or, well, actually being given permission, to enjoy themselves without judgment when they play certain roles.
right.
Yeah, so and anime, oh, definitely cosplay is
Mm,
well a very good way to do that. So
absolutely. I've also read about the yami kawaii fashion trend in Japan, right? Where people who have survived suicide attempts wear on this clothing to kind of imply that I'm sensitive, please, like, I'm sensitive. Instead of outright saying I'm on the verge of taking my life, please don't bother me. They just don on yami kawaii fashion. I don't know how prevalent it is, but I have seen and read about these kind of ways of self-expression that people have picked up on from all of these subcultures. So it's good to see in a way that where your voice doesn't find expression directly, given the social constructs we exist in, there is a medium in play which lets people at least empathize with what your struggles probably are, right? So, I mean, yeah, it would be fascinating to know what the reality is, if I were to come and experience it myself. But yeah, from far apart, it's difficult to say what is real and what is depicted to be real online. So yeah, there's that too.
yes, it is indeed, and well, I very much hope that we'll see you in Japan very soon. Hopefully
Yes,
by the end of this year. But
indeed.
yes, however, I just remember that at home. So my daughter, she's 9 years old now, but she actually started watching Japanese anime, and she watched all the kids stuff, and then she moved. Suddenly, she moved to the Demon Slayer series,
Mm.
and then from there, she's now very much hooked on. There is another one which is called Haikyuu, and it's about volleyball. But the topic is, for example, volleyball, but there are so many other things. And as you mentioned in the beginning, it's all about friendship, it's all about brotherhood. And
Absolutely.
sometimes, yes, and there is also another theme that I have noticed is very strong here. That's the family
Mm.
relations, and the
Yes.
love among family members. So it has been fascinating, and that was really strong in the Demon Slayer
Mm.
series. So, but to me as a Westerner, some of the concepts there, they seem to be a little bit dark. And
Absolutely.
yeah, so I just sometimes I don't feel like watching some of those episodes because
Mm.
yeah, they are dark really. And still,
Yes.
yes, those series they're enjoyed by both kids and adults, and then they don't feel anything that is disturbing to them. It's
Mm.
just pure enjoyment. And also another point, you mentioned in the beginning that you have to always be an active viewer of anime. Is that I mean, it's probably a little bit different from what you meant, but when I see my daughter watch Haikyuu, that's the series about volleyball.
Mm.
Oh, she's so. I mean, like sometimes she just stands up and starts. In addition, to watching them and following the story, it's like I want to go and play now. I want to try this and that. So they are also in this sense of the word. I would say that they are quite inspirational as well.
Absolutely.
So yes.
To what you said in terms the best adaptation of the Ramayana that exists, while this is not exactly about anime, but the Ramayana, the Legend of Prince Ram, that is an anime that was made by now they are animators at Studio Ghibli. But when the movie came out, that was around, I think, I'm not really sure exactly how long ago. But at that point, we had a government in power that was not, that was very hyper religious. And so they didn't allow that movie to be released, but it is currently being remastered and being prepared for a re-release. The amount of excitement in India to see that movie, right? It's even from people who say stuff like anime is cartoon. Not the case. Anime and cartoon, as Candy rightfully points out in the comments, are two different things. The kind of excitement that exists in India, because people have been watching that anime on Cartoon Network. People have been seeing clips of it on YouTube for the longest time. And the songs that were in the movie, dubbed in various different Indian languages, they are sung in places, and it's incredible the kind of engagement that the anime has without people even realizing that it is an anime, you know. So I think with a lot of to your point on darker themes, because Ramayan, technically speaking, is a dark story. Uh, the the mode that, in my opinion, anime uses to tell the story, it makes that darkness feel almost something that could be a part of your life. Again, not like a literal demon that you need to slay coming into your life, but then you do understand those themes, right? Feeling abandoned, the loss of a family unit, right? The I would say the fear of being left behind, the fear of fear of change, not just anything specific, just change in general. These type of things are, I think, expressed very well. And we like to believe that children don't really get it. And I'm coming at this from my experience as a child and a teenager. But I think children do get it. And when they see something of this sort, this type of a story, I think it's a validation of sort that, oh, this sort of negative thing that I have been feeling, uh, the character in the TV show is also feeling it. Like, oh, yes, I'm not weird. You know, that kind of a validation. And I'm coming at this from me being a child teenager in 2007 8. Now we can get validation online. But at that point in time, the validation that I was looking for had to come either from society or from the content that I was, the media that I was consuming. So, in that regard, I think, I genuinely appreciate anime so much over cartoons and things of that sort because they go where others don't. They go dark. And as children, I think we are not really made familiar with the darkness that exists in the world. And then when we encounter it, we are so shocked and hurt and traumatized by what ends up happening. I think in many ways, uh, I do credit anime for my resilience to things because, to be honest, I was shielded from a lot of things, right? Which includes I'm going parasocial here, but things like my grandmother trying to poison me because I was a kid, right? I was not told these things. These are things I discovered when I grew older, and then I was so shocked. Now, had I lived in my cocoon, not having kind of the context of negativity that does exist in the world, I would have been absolutely shattered. But in this case, I just brushed it off. I was like, yeah, old, Kuso Babas being Kuso Babas, so to speak. So I think that is something wonderful that anime does. Personal opinion, but yeah.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And I do believe that many of the stories are cathartic and also very
Hmm.
educational. So it's true. And sometimes, yeah, I appreciate the point you made about children being able to learn from anime and learn about the dark side of life because yeah, in the Western world, we grow up with fairy tales, and of course, there is a clear division between black and white and the good and evil and so on. But somehow, the emphasis is mostly on the good side of life. And I
Yes.
think that just to your point, and I so much agree with you on that we are not really prepared to face the difficulties that come up to us when once we grow up and once we become social beings. I mean, like we become adults anyway. So yeah, thank you very much for making that point. And it's yeah something that I have been thinking about and I have never actually verbalized it. So yeah. Great.
On to what Candy has said, there are dark mangas.
Yeah.
I was trying to pronounce his name the day before when we were talking to each other. I still can't pronounce his name. Ito-san, let me call it that. His Uzumaki manga, when I read it, I had so many nightmares, straight up nightmares for a week or so after going through it because the verbalization of the story, it's chef's kiss perfection. So I've been waiting with bated breath for that anime to get released because the book, the comic, so to speak, the manga, traumatized my head to the point where I'm having multiplicative nightmarish arcs going in my head when I sleep. Now imagine what would happen if I watch the anime. It's going to be glorious. So I'm so excited for the darker themes as well because I genuinely think that darkness is one of those unexplored niches. So as a writer, uh, it's one of those places where I like to go to, I guess, look for better ways to tell a story that is not really told yet, right? So there are so many dark mangas that I have read, and I'm so thankful that I have access to this type of storytelling because what does exist, as you rightfully pointed out, we have the black and the white, the grays, the moral gray fabrics, which generally form their fiber. No, which generally form their, let's call it, t-shirt of society. That isn't generally depicted in the stories we tell each other in the West. Even in Indian storytelling, we don't have a lot of it. Our older ancient literature is gray, but our modern literature is also very black and white. Pronounced hero, pronounced heroine. There's a villain, generally, that villain is society. Story goes on, done, finito. There's not much of the grayness there, right? So you watch it and you forget about it immediately. That isn't the
Yes.
case, I think,
Yeah.
with a
With
lot of
that,
anime. It stays with you.
it stays with you because there are a lot of yes, a lot of shades, as you say, and
Mm.
that's one thing that has actually stayed with me because basically it helps you realize that the world is so different and everybody is so different and everybody thinks in a different way, and it's also fascinating because we westerners tend to think that the Japanese are very uniform and they think in the same way and so on, and actually that's not the case. So on the surface it may look so, but it's really different when you get to know the people. And manga and also anime, these two genres as an expression of the Japanese culture, well, one of the expressions anyway, they show you how much diversity there is below the surface here.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Can I quickly ask question? Like,
Go
sorry,
ahead. Yes, good morning and go ahead. Thank you for
sorry.
coming.
Okay, so okay, I'm trying to. Okay, I apologize firsthand that if I mispronounce your name. Your name pronounced Binati.
Yes, but you can call
Okay,
me BS. Yeah, I love
B
that
BS.
because it
Okay,
BS
all
because it
right.
abbreviates to bullshit. It's perfect.
I mean, okay, I never really encountered the person who said, "Please call me BS." Okay, that's cool. Okay, so you don't know, you have no idea when I saw this title. That, oh my gosh, they're gonna talk about anime, and I got so excited, and I can spend hours and hours talking about that. But I'm trying to be brief because I see the Candy is on the stage. I think you made a very good point about some darkness has so many shades, and I want to touch briefly on Damon's, the Slayer, and then I think the appeal of the anime to me is, when you see, I love your heart. When I see there, there's so many demons there, and then every demon has their own stories, and when you look at them, I said, you cannot say 100%, you cannot be 100% sure. Depend on the timing and the background, I can be a demon. They all have their own reasons and stories. So that's the appeal to me, the anime. And then also, you know so I don't know. Okay, so how do you watch anime? So I presume you are in. I believe you're very good with that. I believe you in India, right? So do you watch
Yes.
anime with the subtitles or dubbed, or how do you watch?
So this is okay. I will have to admit to something. Do not report me to the police. When I was younger, I used to sail the high seas, as they call it, or do piracy to watch anime, and a lot of it was available exclusively in Japanese because obviously Americans. This is 2007, 8, 9. Americans had not really exactly got on to the anime train yet. So English dubs and massive volumes of piracy happening in English wasn't happening. Everything that was available was exclusively in Japanese. This is also the time when I was playing video games, and a lot of video game crowd, especially the one that was doing online game, those collaborative gaming type things. These were people from, I think, people from Asia, right? So I ended up playing video games with some guys from Japan who were extremely intrigued by Rajnikant and all of these actors in India. And they were like, we want to learn Hindi. I was like, Mujhe Hindi aata hai. I know Hindi. And then I said, can you teach me Japanese? And they were like, yes, sure. So using broken English, while playing video games, we were teaching each other our respective languages.
No, actually,
So
that's
that is
very
how.
impressive. Yeah, I
Yeah,
mean,
it is like people had a common goal, which was I want to watch my cartoons. He wanted to watch the movies. And then we did a language exchange while playing a video game. So currently, I am actually working on unlearning so much of incorrect Japanese that I have learned because
okay.
I was learning from anime
um,
and from video game dudes. So you can assume what they have taught me.
Okay,
So,
though the reason that I ask is, so because subtitle can be very interesting when I watch
mm,
because I'm, fortunate enough that there is an application called Crunchyroll. It's owned by
yes.
Sony. There are a bunch of, there's almost timely release of almost concurrent with the Japanese release. And when I'm watching in Japanese, but I see the subtitles in English, and those translation typically not 100%, but typically excellent. And then also, I'm glad that you are hearing Japanese voice actors. That's
Mm,
also the appeal of the. They're so great. When I see the English dub version,
yeah.
they're just not really, not even compare. So
Agreed. I
yeah,
mean,
and
I fight people who tell me that dub. I'm like, no, always give the original language a chance because from a writer's mind, the way people think changes with every single language. This is what I've discovered while learning languages, right? So the way I think in Gujarati, the way I think in Hindi, the way I think in English versus the way I think in Japanese, different. As in the way we word our thoughts, it changes. So the same applies to when you translate something that was intended to be in one language to some other language.
hmm,
I am definitely not a fan of dub culture. I love subtitles, and I really, whenever the option is available, I tell people go for subtitles, irrespective of the language, because in the dubbing, there's so much context that is eliminated to just make the thing translate well for the audiences. And I experienced that while reading Chitoran or Breast and Eggs by Miyako Kawakami. It's a book. They have completely eliminated the intricacies of the accent in the English
right.
book, which was implying the subtle judgment of the sister that was living in Tokyo. Right. So I was so bummed out. But then I think you win some, you lose some
That's true.
with anime. I'm like, no, I will die on this hill whenever this argument comes up. Go for subs over dubs because no fault to English artists, voiceover artists, but there's some context that gets eliminated just based on the voice and the way it is sounded.
No, that's a
So
good point. Actually, I'm sorry, and then I'm gonna make a very quick point. One, so I don't know if you have watched this. This is old anime. It's Cyborg 009. Those are the 9 cyborgs. And when I was a kid, I thought that was a cool. The robots fighting. Now it's all. Oh, thank you, Candy. Now all the episodes are available in YouTube, and I'm rewatching it, and like as an adult, I see there's so many subtle. this sort of messages of this anime. There are so many races, and it was incredible that this creator, they were just sort of put all those cultural messages into this one anime, and that's the fascination. And also, this is actually the sad truth about Japanese youth at this moment. If somebody can tell me why we have so many reincarnation theme, is that because the youth are not too happy with their current life, so they're wanting to be reborn. They die young and they're reborn as like a king or some character in the video game. Is that is this their unhappiness about their current actual lives? What do you think?
I understand this to be part of a lot of research actually is proving this. Millennial onwards, we are seeing a level of social fragmentation and a level of abandonment uh, increasing or spiking, so to speak, right? So people are, first of all, uh, becoming familiar with, let's say, popular and impractical beliefs where everything toxic has to I know I sound terrible, but going no contact or low contact or breaking apart from your family unit, that is something that a lot of people are doing. I am not going to deal with your toxic bullshit. So bye, you live your life, I will live mine, and they are moving away, right? So loss of family unit. Secondly, the choices that your friends make versus what you make. Say you are single and all your other friends are married. So you experience, in a way, loss of your friend unit. People are losing their faith because, of course, we are finding out so much pedophilia and so much corruption and things of that sort from institutions of religion that no matter what we like to say around this, places of worship used to be a social activity, right? And now that is largely completely eliminated from younger people's lives. So, loss of social unit as well as faith. And then you bring into the question of the superficial nature of relationships given the interference of cybernetic devices like phones and laptops and things of that sort. Young people are extremely discontent with their life. They have money, they have access to a lot of opportunities and resources, but many of them are so utterly alone and so utterly, I would say, dissatisfied with their daily life, and they don't have a way in which they could express it, right? Because admitting to certain things is seen as a sign of weakness across the board around the world. So this theme of reincarnating into someone else, something else in a different world, this has a lot of acceptance, not just in like anime. This is across the board, even in young adult fiction books. This is a very common theme. In movies also, we are seeing this, that normal people's stories are not really attracting as much attention as stories of, you suddenly getting a superpower or you being transported into some other reality. So I think the reason behind this is social disconnect. People are unwilling to compromise and connect with each other. And because of that, they feel alone. And they think that the solution to this is changing of reality, which is sad. It's sadness square, actually, adding on to the sadness.
Okay, good point. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for having me here, Maya and everybody.
Yes,
And I would
Candy.
like to chime in
Welcome.
something. Yeah, you mentioned about Harajuku. Harajuku is not the place for manga. Shibuya, Harajuku, Yoyogi is the place for the kawaii culture. While meanwhile, manga culture started by Akihabara. These are the places that you can select your research. For those people who are in Japan, since Yuka and me is living in Japan and Maya too and Atami too, all people don't read mangas. There are certain exceptions. There are certain people who don't like it. Some people does. They don't want to dive into more. I mean, that's the whole process. But the old generation, the now 50s, for the now 40s, 50s, and 60s, this is the people who love mangas. before. But the new generation right now doesn't even know the old manga stories and whatever. And because why? Because of our new high tech technology. Physical books are now, I mean, you can still have the physical book, but if you want to read something, it's all by e-Kindle. There's a lot of, streaming. Sometimes in Netflix, you can find in Hulu, you can find in Ameba. Everything right now is in digital. So my question is, how do you think so far? And we started the kawaii culture, by the way. So how do you think? I mean, since India, United States, France, they adopted our manga culture. For your writer perspective side, how do you think this will last and how long this will last? Beneath.
Hmm. Fascinating question. I
Mm-hmm.
think it's not going to last. You know why? And this
Mm,
is, again, this is probably a controversial opinion. Uh, and I was telling this to Maya and Tim as well. I'm noticing like an Americanization of anime, and it is becoming increasingly difficult to watch most of the stuff because it is so shiny. And I feel like a lot of the emotional elements are taken out and replaced by, something way more aesthetic. And I don't see Japanese creators coming up with this. I know they don't, the amount of thought that was put into the storytelling, it was visible, it was palpable. I felt it, right? I felt the emotion from the story. Given the involvement of other cultures and countries who are giving anime and manga and kawaii culture a shot, I'm seeing the end result is not a cocktail or a mocktail that I drink because it feels hollow in many ways. So I think this is a trend that will probably die down soon enough because the execution is poor. And the I think the thought that needs to go into emulating to create the art, right? That's not there. Uh, personal opinion from my side is there's a lot of one-upmanship that is going on, right? China, I think, is trying to create a lot of anime style storytelling. I think it began with the story of Neja, and recently they have started stories on the white snake and things of that, their own mythological stories, so to speak. I watch those cartoons versus watching the cartoons that are originally coming out of Japanese studios with Japanese animators and things of that. So you could see the difference, right? So I think
mm,
this is a trend that will probably die down in maximum 10 years because one word I
mm,
learned from the
mm,
NHK Hayao Miyazaki documentary was
mm,
Fujimi, right? The atmosphere that your work
mm,
creates, that is so completely missing from the works
mm,
by other people.
mm, mm,
So I
mm,
think it's a trend that will die down. And what you said, young the older stuff, I still cling on to the older animes. There's no shame
mm,
in admitting that because a
mm,
lot of the way the story is being told, it's changed. I mean, Naruto is so close to my heart, and I find it so difficult to watch Boruto because it is so annoying. I'm sorry, it is. I
mm,
want the emotions. Don't give me but
mm, mm,
that's my personal opinion about this. And I
mm,
genuinely think it's going to die down because it is
mm,
reflecting in the money. And once the
mm,
money stops, because a lot of people have
mm,
gotten into this because of the money
mm.
in the animation game. Uh,
Mm. So you
what
mean to say Chinese, cartoons are going to be the trend, not the Koreans, because Koreans are also releasing their own stories and they're adopting the Japanese cultures. These three triangles a lot and battled for this. Don't you
mm,
think Korea too will exceed?
yeah, I think Korea is, again, personal opinion and personal observation. Korean animation, per my viewer sensibilities, it's still not getting those movements right. I feel like I'm watching a cartoon, and I always
Mm,
say there's a
mm,
difference between, as you pointed
mm,
out, cartoon and
mm.
anime are different.
Oh
Cartoon
yes,
is
it
like,
is. Mm,
yeah, Whereas anime, it's I don't know what it is, whether it is the hand-drawn animations which make these frames appear so lifelike, even though the proportions of the characters are
Mm,
not natural or
mm,
human at all, you still
mm,
feel like,
mm,
oh yeah, these people could exist. And
mm, mm, mm,
if if they were real, we could totally be friends, or I would totally support
mm,
the protagonist in hating the antagonist.
mm, mm.
That thing I'm not seeing.
Mm, mm. I mean, some mangas are based on true stories. That's why.
Hmm.
So that's why they
Okay.
came out so real. Yes. I mean, the things that I know, the two writers that I know who writes manga, or those that maybe three, they are telling the stories through by their experiences, life story,
Right.
short for short. But it came out that the story twist and the plot is sometimes good and sometimes not. It's really bad.
Mm,
But when it comes to visual, it's all good. So
right.
what do you think? I mean, for you, for your from your experience, do you think
Mm.
physical ones or the visual ones? Which one do you prefer?
Hmm. I still prefer the ones with physicality, to be
Oh,
honest, because
that's great.
it's easier to get
Mm,
into the mind of the
mm,
characters, right? I mean,
mm,
it's a tiny thing, it's a tiny frame, so to speak. It's a
mm,
tiny moment, but the
mm,
physicality of it. Great example of this is Prince Ashtaka in Momonoke Hime. He just goes to that
mm,
river and he
mm,
washes
mm,
his bowl in water. It's just a small frame. But when
mm,
he does
mm,
that, you're like, oh yeah, I also do this. I also rinse my bowl.
mm,
It's very small things that are completely missing from the
mhm,
other visual stuff, right? And
mm, mm,
that to
mm, mm,
me takes away from the Fujimi. It becomes like, okay, this is unrealistic. I forget it. Whereas
mm,
this is
mm,
something I can see more of. And I know I'm being very annoying here in terms
mm,
of
mm.
preferences, but you like what you like. It's just
Oh yes, oh
it's
yes.
it's one of those.
Mm,
It's just one of those things. I think. Uh, I forget what the movie was called exactly. The first
mm.
one that came out, the Godzilla movie. I think Shin Godzilla, or it was
I have.
Godzilla.
I'm a huge fan of Godzilla, by the way.
Of course, of course. I mean, and that movie was immediately copied by
Mm,
Korea, right? And
yeah,
then even North Korea kidnapped the directors and made Pulgasari, which is also a version of King Kong. Sorry, a version of Godzilla. And then
yeah.
Hollywood also copied it, right? Now you compare
Oh yeah.
all of these different stories and see what original Godzilla is trying to talk about. The subtext
Mm,
is, from what I saw, a
mm-hmm,
rapidly changing, the rapid change in the social fabric
mm,
in terms
mm,
of
mm, mm,
industrialization,
mm,
which was
mm,
taking over. I
mm-hmm,
I presume which was taking
mm.
over Japanese society post the
Oh yes,
Second World War.
oh yes. Oh yeah,
So
there's a lot of holes on those movies. I am not a huge fan of that. It's a zero for me as a rating.
exactly, see that is what it's you'll
It's
watch
a
these
zero
movies and you're
rating.
like
I'm so
something
sorry,
is
but it's
missing.
true.
It's true. It's true. I completely agree with you. It's that. So I think ultimately that will reveal itself in the box office in because these
Yeah,
are
there's
businesses.
something lacking. Here am I. I mean, watching it, there is something missing. Come on, guys, pull it up.
Yes, there's
Okay,
something
great.
missing.
So,
In
Candy and Binati,
That's
thank
true.
you. Yes, we're getting
I'm
very
so
close
sorry
to.
about that.
No,
Mm,
that's okay. We're getting very close to 9 o'clock, and we still have Kikuchi-san here. So,
okay, okay.
yes, thank you for.
yeah,
Thank you
thank you
for
for
your
sorry, Maya.
insights, Candy. No, that's okay. So, Kikuchi-san, good morning, and thank you for coming up. So, yes, what are your thoughts today?
Oh, thank you so much for having me here. I'm Kikuchi Kei. I'm a victim of child abuse, and as I'm a victim of child abuse, I really want to know that everyone about how harm the anime is affecting the people and affecting the children's living conditions, and really want you to know about that. And as you know, like Japanese, like animes is really kind of like pornographic というか like a very sexually express the human body, and such as like a girl's breast is really big, and like treat very small children like a 5 or 4 years old girl is kind of like really sexually they use some animes, and like some people watch that kind of anime, and so they first time they never thought about like a very small children to be sexually, but like some men turning to see the small children as an sexual some kind of stimulation. So like they, it's really, I think Japanese government really need to strict the express children like very shouldn't allow to express children like very sexually. That's what
Yes.
I
No, I agree with you. Totally
mhm.
agree with you because
Yeah, yeah.
it is hypersexualized and
Mhm,
jokes. It's funny, but then when you
mhm,
analyze what you laughed at, you
mhm,
realize, oh, I just laughed at someone,
mhm,
um, and how they were just humiliated based on their appearance, which
mhm,
generally is a very common trope, right? You'll have, as you
mhm,
rightfully said, big breasted women who are being picked on by
mhm,
their classmates just because they have big breasts. And that is such a weird
mhm,
storytelling angle to pick on. But
mhm,
it's across the board. Almost every anime has
mhm.
one character that has these characteristics and they
Yes.
are hypersexualized and
Yeah.
oftentimes these are school children and
Mhm,
high school students and things of the
mhm,
sort. And I
yeah.
remember there was one anime that I was watching where
Mhm,
a guy adopts some girl. And
mhm,
then I checked the manga, the guy has married the girl he adopted. I was like, what is happening? How is this okay? Right. So I do agree that I think
mhm,
there needs to be some moderation
mhm.
in terms of what should be allowed and what shouldn't, because ultimately these are things that are being broadcasted to people. I was a teenager when I saw this, right? So when I saw the ungodly proportions of Tsunade, I was like,
Mhm,
oh yeah, that's normal, right? That's what I want,
mhm.
even though it is completely unachievable as a body standard. Uh, so I totally agree with you that there needs to be moderation, and there at least needs to be content warnings, right? To let people know that this is wrong. Because
Yes.
oftentimes young people are not really sure of what is right or what is wrong because
Yeah.
everything has to be taught.
And like especially Japanese like culture or Japanese education doesn't really tells the children about like a how sexual thing is like a really they don't really get sex education in Japan. Then also like a law, like a Japanese law is really kind of like 13 years old person can be have sex in this in Japanese law right now. And also once I kind of say about like should be restrict the children to be treated as a sexually is like if I once I say like many people are against me about what I said, and like
Right.
so and Japanese culture is really very how to say not good at this area really. And,
Yes, I'm sending you a hug from India because we are known as the rape capital of the world, right? Because
mhm.
it's ridiculous. Some
Yes.
of the so
Hmm.
and when you try to report it, the police doesn't take the we call it first information report or FIR.
Hmm.
When you go to register a crime, they tell you not to register the crime because they are like you will ruin the guy's life. I'm like he ruined my life. Please take the complaint, right?
It,
But these you don't have social support either. So I'm sending you the biggest hug first of all, and I'm so glad that you had enough courage to
mhm.
raise a voice. I'm so sorry that these people didn't hear you and they
Yes.
dismissed your
Hmm.
experience so
Hmm.
cruelly. And I hope that there's a place in Yome for all of them.
80%, 70% and 80% pornography is created in Japan, and
Yeah.
many people is protecting this business, and really big business, and many people is against when we say we should restrict them, and we should put more restriction about this kind of area. And also many people doesn't know how much victims are having very 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 difficult situation in at a bar, at a court, at the once
Right.
when the it's pretty much easy to rape, and a rapist is cannot be really judged. It's
Absolutely.
because of a Japanese law. Kind of this law is not really good, and also a system of police, and also the court and law they don't really know about how much the victims have in difficult situation. It's really killing their spirit. They're really killing soul, and these victims are really use lifetime to overcome traumas, and it's really difficult. But people doesn't know how much hard it is, and I know many victims, and I contact with many victims, and how much hard it is. And we should stop the anime to use the very small children to use as a sexually, treat as a sexually. And also we have to change the system of politics, and also law, and also the court, and do you know Black Box? Shiori Ito has written she was raped by the journalist,
Oh
and
yes, we
do,
know
do you know
her.
her? And I read the book, and she has to explain what had happened at the police to the police officer, life size of doll, and she did it again in front of the 504 people of a male officer of policemen.
Mm.
It's really harming her again. It's
Of course.
really has to change the situation, really has to change the systems. And Ito Shiori, when she said to the police officer I wanted to talk to female police officer, she talked to the female police officer, and then the female police officer says, oh well, thank you for telling me that, but I am not in the section of investigating the such as rape, and you have to tell the male police officer again same things, and she has to talk over and over many times. And
Right.
so as other victims that I know, who I know, she has to say many things, and also says very abusive things from male member of police officer, and also at the court, at the lawyers. And it's really hard situation, and we really need to restrict the sexual expression in animes, especially for children. It's really
Agreed.
big huge influence towards their brain. They gonna
True.
make the brain systems, they are creating in their brains. Children are making their brain once they see the stimulation of sexual things in anime, they think that's okay to do it real world. It's really hard.
Yes,
Yes.
indeed. And I'm really sorry for well, the experience you
Yeah.
had as a child, and
Mhm.
definitely something has to be done, and it cannot
Yeah.
happen soon enough. But well, I think that there needs to be a movement about that, and that movement has to be in Japan.
Mhm.
So the more women speak out, the better they will be heard.
Mhm.
And yes, definitely, social media are it's good to speak on social media, but it's also good to speak directly to the people who are in charge of that.
Yeah, I will.
So that's otherwise social media does not really solve the problem. So yeah, and thank you very much for coming up and sharing that. And we are already 10 minutes past 9 o'clock. We usually
Thank you for.
No, thank you for coming up, really, and for letting your voice be heard here in this room. So, and then we need to proceed with closing the room because it's Wednesday morning and everybody is going to work or getting ready for work. So, well, Binati, a few words in conclusion so that we can close the room and let everybody go around, their affairs today.
I think I would agree with the last point made, which is anime is a version of content, and at the end of the day, the content you consume shapes your worldview. Uh, there's good sides to that. There are dark sides to that, and both of those need equal volume of discussion. We can't just do what I just did, which is focus on all the positives and ignore the negatives. The sum total of it all. Uh, there are problems with it, and there are advantages to it. And at the end of the day, it's a medium. The more we actively engage with the medium, which also includes sometimes speaking against it, the better it becomes in the future. So, I would like to end the room by saying, I hope we consciously consume anime and we speak up where we need to speak up whenever we encounter toxic themes. So, yeah, there's that.
Yes, definitely. And thank you very much for making that point. With this, we wish you a great day. It's been a wonderful conversation. We got also a couple of ideas about future rooms as well. So please, if you haven't followed Binati on LinkedIn, or if you haven't followed anybody else who is here in the room on Clubhouse or LinkedIn or other social media, reach out to them, connect, because that's how we actually communicate and how we stay together. Binati, again, this was a great room. Thank you for coming up with the theme and thank you for being our guest speaker today. We wish you a great day, and we'll be here once again on Sunday morning at 8:20 with Japanese politics with Timothy Langley, and next week we'll be here once again on Wednesday, 8 o'clock. That's it. Have a great day. Thank you for tuning in today. We will be on air next week on Wednesday at 8 a.m. Japan time again, so join us. Until then, you can find us at japanexpertinsights.com and our YouTube channel. If you want to stay informed about our upcoming events, follow us on Clubhouse, LinkedIn or Twitter. Again, we are looking forward to your joining us next week. Until then, stay well and make the best of the day. See you!